Hey, everybody, welcome back. As you know, this is It's Not Normal, It's Toxic. I am Dr. Heidi, your host. And today we have someone who might be even more outgoing than me, which is big. If you're watching the video, one look at this woman and you'll see what I'm talking about. She has great, big, huge red glasses on, and they're adorable. And it makes me want to do something like that. So today I want to welcome Allison. I'm just going to welcome you. This is where you say, hi, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for having me, Dr. Heidi.
Yes, and we have not spoken. We've just correlated through email. And so as you could tell, I'm super excited to kind of get to know you because I already knew that your personality was very vibrant. I know that you know about the work that I do personally, and I know that you can relate to the work, and you can relate to why I do the work, and you can relate to the situations that the people that are listening to this podcast are in. And there is one thing that you have that I don't relate to very well. And obviously that's why when I was introduced to you, I thought, yes, she needs to be on here. Most of the listeners have heard bits and pieces of my story, but there's one aspect of my story that I can't speak to from a place of experience. I speak to it a lot, but not from a place of experience. And that subject is where addictions and alcohol ties into the toxic relationship, both on both sides in the toxic relationship. I believe that when my former relationship was getting worse, so towards the end, I was not really a drinker. I have talked about, I was raised in this little tiny Christian community, and like we'd sneak wine coolers maybe, and so I was just raised that it just wasn't part of my environment. So it was never really a drive for me because I never saw it. When I was married to my former, there was an occasional bottle of wine, or there was an occasional, 6-pack of fuzzy navels or whatever, but we just weren't real drinkers. And now today I'm thankful because I have seen the residual since he did start drinking, what the aftermath is with the, his consecutive relationships. But when it was getting towards the end, I really started liking wine. And it was kind of when wine got big, and everything was wine on coasters and wine on t-shirts and all that. And I was separated and in a different house, and I bought a box of wine. Okay, as anybody knows, it's very easy to pour a glass of wine and then pour another glass of wine, and then we never pour a glass of water and then pour another glass of water and then pour another glass of water, right? And I think one of the things that kept me from tripping up is I had a friend, no idea why she even brought this up, because I had never really had a history with alcohol, but she said, you're in a very vulnerable place. So don't be sitting at home pouting, drinking glass after glass of wine. If you're going to drink wine in this stressful time in your life, limit yourself to 2 glasses, because she said, I've seen people go down. That's all she said. And she had no inclination that I was going to do that. She had no history of seeing me do anything like that. It just came out of her mouth, and I've never, ever forgotten it. And I do think that was the universe's way of going, here you go. Take it or leave it. And I latched onto it. So I'm super thankful for that. But you have a business. I'm thinking it's a business, right? And it's called JuicyAF. And for all of you who have awful minds in the gutter like me, I know exactly what you're thinking, but it actually stands for Juicy Alcohol Free, correct?
It does. And it can stand for the other two. Sure. Why not? It can be both.
Yeah. And I like to swear on my podcast, but when I swear, then I have to text my dad and go, Dad, sorry about that, because he listens to all of them. And I really did want to say that, but I'll save it for later in the show. So now that they kind of know why I have you on the show, I want you to just go and tell us a little bit about you and how you got here, and whatever about your story you want. If I feel like I need to interject with a question, I'll stop you, and the listeners don't care if they hear me interrupt. They hear me interrupt all the time.
That's great.
So you have the floor, my dear.
All right. So here's what I do. I help successful women experiment with being alcohol free for a period of time. 30 days, 90 days, whatever it happens to be, for more success in their professional lives and more peace at home. And quite frankly, being happier with themselves. What I noticed with a lot of successful women, and I was one of them, that I was able to control and create and achieve and succeed in so many areas of my life. But I had this little teeny problem that once I started drinking wine, there were many times when I just couldn't stop. And no matter what I did, I couldn't seem to figure out how to not drink too much. I'd try alternating water with glasses of wine, and then I'd get sick of drinking water. I'd be just as drunk, just a little bit more hydrated. And,
A little less of a headache.
yeah, maybe. I would only drink clear liquor. I would only drink wine. I would only drink Tuesdays and Thursdays. I mean, none of it worked. None of it worked, just to shortcut to the answer here. And what I have created for myself and for hundreds of other women now is a very simple but counterintuitive 6-part program that really helps get clear and get to a point where you are your ideal self and you are thinking of yourself in a way that's kind and gentle, compassionate, and affirmative.
Mhm.
So, I grew up in a family. My joke is that it was 50 shades of beige. And if you're watching this, you can see that I am anything but shades of beige.
So you grew up in my family.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Just
And then
very
I think I
different.
married your ex-husband. So, and, my parents were scientists and school teachers, and my older sisters were about 16 months apart. They still are, weirdly. And there was a gap of about 5 years before I was born. And the story was I was supposed to have been Matthew, so like existentially, I was somehow wrong.
Problem child. Right.
From the get-go. And because my sisters were, really, really best buds and really close to each other, and my mom and dad were very serious and quiet. And then me, and I didn't feel like, I kept wondering what in the heck was wrong with me. Like I wasn't scientific and I wasn't quiet and I felt like I was the fifth wheel born into this very happy family of 4. And because of that, the story I made up when I was a little girl was that somehow something was wrong with me. And that became the central principle of how I showed up in the world. I think something's wrong with me, so I need to way overcompensate. And so, I was a straight A student, and I was in all the musicals, and I was, sang in all the choirs. And I was in this big performative kind of space, born from very quiet, studious people. It was such a mismatch. And because of that sense of not being good enough, not being smart enough or pretty enough or successful enough or whatever it was, enough, or its twin sister, I am way too much. People don't know what to do with me.
Right.
There's not a lot of comfortable wiggle room between those two stories. And so the man that I fell in love with when I was just out of high school had that narrative, like nothing I did was quite good enough, was death by 10,000 paper cuts a day.
Mm-hmm.
And that story was so resonant for me that it felt normal. It felt like, yes, of course, this is the way it is. And at the time, after I graduated from college, I had been a professional musician. He was in the Chicago Symphony, so he was, of course, always going to be better than I was
Mhm.
professionally. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't sit so well. So I decided to switch.
Even if he wasn't, he would have always been better than you professionally, right?
Yes, exactly. And so I went into marketing and advertising, and I started building a career at a global ad agency in Chicago. And it was so confusing because at work I would get all these accolades and promotions and opportunities and treated very well, recognized. And at home I would be told how bad I was and inadequate I was and didn't look right. And like I'd come home
Mhm.
from getting my hair done and he would say, now is that person a stylist? It
Mhm.
was just like, oh my God. And as that gap started to grow, the cognitive dissonance became really, really difficult for
Yeah.
me. Now, part of the thing that attracted me to him was, he drank and his family drank and his friends. The first thing he ever invited me to
So
was a
people were
cocktail
loud.
party.
So people were loud and
Yes,
like you and fun. I get that.
fun. And the first thing he ever invited me to was a cocktail party. And I was like 18. I was like, oh, not a kegger, a cocktail party. That sounds glamorous. I like glamour. And, and like we traveled around the world when he was on tour with the symphony. And so, it looked relatively shiny and okay. We had these two absolutely glorious, fabulous, wonderful kids. And when the ill treatment was starting to be enacted to them, I was done.
Yep.
I came home one night to a situation that was so wrong. When he got in the car to go and get butter or milk or whatever, I scooped up my kids and a suitcase and I left and I never went back. Which was very, par for the course. The high drama was par for the
Chaos,
course at that
chaos,
point.
chaos. Yes.
Yes, KAYOS, chaos. Yes.
Yes.
Um, and over the next decade, so I married him when I was 21. We got divorced when I was 31. I left when I was 31. I had a 1-year-old and a 7-year-old. And that next decade, as a single mom, you know, I was a diligent worker, successful ad exec by day, taking care of my
Mhm.
kids, doing all the poster boards and all the stuff. And when they would go to their dads for the weekend, I was party girl, single 30-something party girl downtown Chicago. It was like high school all over for me, where I was like a really great student all week. And then on the weekends, I was like hell let loose,
Yes. Let out of the
And
cage. Yes.
yeah. And so it was the same thing all over again. It was so nuts. And I had a friend who gave me a bottle of wine, and she said to me, I hate thinking of you sitting over there in your house after the kids go to bed drinking alone. And I was like, dude, I live alone and I drink, ergo, I drink alone. But I didn't pay attention to it the way you paid attention to your friend. And there was one night in my very, very, very late 30s where I had thrown a party for my 40th birthday the weekend before I turned 40. And um, I had friends in from all over. And I said, I'm going to drink Diet Coke all night because I want to show up and really be present. And what ended up happening was someone offered me a glass of champagne at about 10:30. And I was like, oh, that lie. One won't hurt. And my children had to undress me and put me to bed. And I was done. That
Mhm.
was, I didn't flip a car. I didn't get a DUI. I didn't end up in jail. I didn't lose my kids. I didn't lose my job. I was successful and it looked relatively shiny on the outside, but inside, that was so counter to the human being that I know I
Mhm.
am.
Mhm.
It's not that I hadn't done bad stuff. I slept with people's husbands, and I mean, I was acting in ways that were kind of counter to my morals and my ethics, but it didn't land for me until it was the look of disappointment in my kids' eyes.
Yeah. Don't you think though, that going through like a toxic relationship situation, you know, we're learning to adapt to fit better in those relationships. And so, you know, I thought I had this whole string of values. And even when I was in it, I still thought I upheld them. And I mean, the honesty, well, I lived with a cheater. Well, that's not living by your values. And like, I feel like during that relationship, all my values got squished and overstepped and compromised. So it doesn't seem like that big a deal when you're thrown into other precarious situations, because you don't really have an identity that upholds your values or your boundaries anymore. So it's like, oh, you know, whatever.
I think that's so astute. I felt like when I was married to my first husband that I had twisted myself into whatever pretzel shape I thought would make him happy. And eventually realized he was just not happy.
Yeah. And
And
we give up things we don't want to, we accept things we shouldn't, we put up with things. And so then when we get flinged back out with not our real identity, I mean, how are we supposed to make a judgment on what our values are? And I mean, I struggled with that when I left. So I totally get that. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. Let me see. Let me check the crowd, because the crowd's going to tell me how I should be in the crowd. And then I'll decide if it's okay or not.
You know, I think that it all stems for me from that same root of feeling like I'm not good enough. I always have felt like I couldn't trust myself. And so for exactly that reason, I'd play to the crowd. You want me to be this way? Great. You know, intuitively, I know exactly what you want me to be, and I will be that for you so that I'm okay. And I think what you say is so kind and so astute. I had no idea who I really was at that point. And I really did not have, I had twisted everything to try to make him happy.
And I
To
think
no
too,
avail.
it's partly it's our personality though. You know, we're the empathetic type of personality that's going to compromise. We want other people happy before ourselves. That's just how we were created. And it's a good personality. You and I just have to be more picky on who we distribute it to. But you know, those certain personalities that came into our life knew that our personality would do that. And I, you know, I struggled with the same thing. You know, I couldn't order off of a menu. I couldn't have told you what made me happy. I couldn't have told you what was right or wrong when I exited.
Yeah, I so appreciate you saying that. But I knew that one morning, I knew that was so far off my compass that it was the end, and that I couldn't go on living that way. And for me, it was like a light switch flipping from on to off.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't had any alcohol since August 9th of 1999, which is the day before I turned 40, which is why I say I got sober in my very, very, very late 30s.
So the last time you were going to party, it was 1999.
Yeah, I really, truly did.
Okay,
Yep.
so let's go into the JuicyAF.
So Juicy,
and I know that you just recently had a book launch also. So
I did. Yeah. I wrote this book and called it JuicyAF. It's dedicated to women who are now where I was, which is successful in a lot of outwardly noticeable ways, and who cannot, where they are, imagine a life devoid of alcohol. A life without drinking seems dull and boring and stupid, and why would you bother? And the reason I called it Juicy with the wink on the AF is because I am inviting people and showing these women how to have a juicy, jubilant, joyful, interesting, vibrant, vital life without alcohol. When we are caught in that dopamine addiction, whether it's to booze or gambling or sex or cocaine or whatever it is, our pleasure pathway gets hijacked in a way that what we think we give value to things that really are valueless. And because of that, we get so confused about what's actually valuable. And so inviting people to a 30-day or a 90-day, give your dopamine pleasure pathway a 90-day break, because you will see things so differently on day 90 than you do on day 1. That's really what this is about.
So let me ask you this, just because I always have to announce when I'm on any podcast and this one, that I'm not a licensed mental health professional, just because this is all my experience stuff. So, don't ditch your mental health professional. Do you have a license? Do you have a degree? Or are you coaching just like me?
I'm coaching like you. I am a trained clairvoyant, so I weave that in. And I'm an executive coach. I am not a therapist. I am not a mental health professional. And I've been working with other women with addiction to alcohol issues for 23 years. So the framework that I've created is very much based on years of trial and error. I went to AA for a good long time and realized that a lot of it is not, it wasn't created for women. It was created by men for men. And so a lot of it is great. It's just, you have to be like Ginger Rogers to Fred Astaire's. You got to do it backwards and in heels.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've done. I've taken a lot of the principles from Alcoholics Anonymous and turned it into something that is more readily, easily accessed and applied for women.
I do, all of those 12-step programs. I have never been through one, but I know a lot of people who have, and the foundation is fantastic. But you're having the same results I'm having. People want it from somebody who has been through it. I have no doubt that when this episode is listened to, that there's going to be people reaching out. There's one thing that as you're talking, I'm doing this mental note in my head. And okay, now I've been remarried for 12 years and now I'm a partier. So,
oh my God, that's hilarious.
Right. Because I went to this, I was in this environment where we didn't ever drink because that's how I was raised. And then I went to a Christian college and then I was in grad school and then I was married. So I didn't have that party college anything. And the man that I'm married to is hilarious and he's fun. And he's, his family had always celebrated with cocktails, I should say. And I can see, because when I was listening to you talk, I can see how even in good times, you can turn to that. Because it's associated with the addictions that people find themselves falling into are everywhere. Alcohol, sex addiction, your pornography. You even mentioned cocaine earlier. Somebody said the other day, 70% of the nations had it or tried it or been on it, or so it's everywhere. So people aren't using it so much for coping anymore. People are using it differently. And when you were talking, I started thinking, okay, I just said that it was never in my history, but now I have a lot more alcohol in my life than I did. It's a social thing, but I could see how someone would go from social to just always like, okay, well, now I'm recording a podcast. I can have a drink and record a podcast. For the listeners, Dr. Heidi could not have a drink and record a podcast because I talk faster than I already do. But I'm just saying it's so adopted by society today that nothing is a big deal to people.
Yeah. So there are several places, inflection points, especially for women. Menopause and problem drinking seem to go hand in hand.
Oh, so that's my excuse. I'm 51. So maybe that's my excuse. No, I've been blaming literally everything on menopause. God, we got a vacuum.
Not?
Yeah, sorry, menopause. Don't the windows need washed? Sorry, menopause. No.
Yeah. And you're right. Marketing works. Mm-hmm. And alcohol is marketed to us as,
and they make us believe it's not dangerous. When you see it so much, it must not be dangerous. It's everywhere.
Well, in reality,
Mhm.
Canada and the WHO have recently declared that no amount of alcohol consumption is safe. It used to be in Canada, 13 drinks a week was fine. And then, a year ago, it went down to zero. Zero is safe. And, I didn't know this stuff. I was doing all the healthy things by day and then undoing them at night. I did
Yeah.
not know. I drank because I had, anxiety and stress and overwhelm. And I thought that having a drink took the edge off. What I didn't know that research shows today is that alcohol increases your baseline anxiety. So, guess what happens? You drink regularly to take the edge off, and the boomerang comes back and says, "Oh, you're going to drink regularly? Cool. We'll just ratchet you
Yep.
up a little bit so that the offset of relaxation doesn't make you so relaxed your heart stops. Oh, great. Okay, I'll have another drink to take the edge off of that higher anxiety. Boom, it gets even higher. And around and around and around you go.
Well, and the other aspect to that is you you do all the healthy things during the day, and then you do all that at night, and then you're not functioning as well. So you're falling behind and you're procrastinating. And then the anxiety of I'm not getting everything done. And I mean, nobody likes to be chasing their tail with that. So
It's true. The other thing that happens physiologically that I didn't know is that drinking regularly, as little as 7 drinks a week, makes you baseline more impulsive. So you're going to flip the guy off that cuts you off, or you're going to mouth off to a client, or you're going to blow up a relationship. This is when you're not drinking,
right.
like you do impulsive stuff when you're having some cocktails, but this is, hey, you're more impulsive, you're more anxious, your sleep is disruptive, and your
Mhm.
gut biome is also disrupted. And most of your serotonin, all those feel good things are made in your gut. So if you feel like crap the day after you drink, it's not just a hangover. There's other
Yeah.
physiological stuff that is not working in your favor.
Which then explains, then we feel bad. So then, oh, let's just have a drink.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, I love this conversation. So tell us about, well, the book is one thing I want you to talk about, but the other thing is you talk about how in the book you detail how you transformed how you interact with negative and challenging people.
Well, so the book, it took
I'm
me about
guessing
a
it's
year.
not have a drink.
No, it's not have a drink. It's interesting. I feel like what's great about having had a drinking issue is that it's such an invitation for personal growth. Because now instead of numbing out when I'm dealing with challenging situations and
Yes.
challenging people, I have had to learn spiritual solutions
Yep.
that
Strategies for sure.
and tools
Yep.
that give me ways to resolve situations or just to freaking let go when it's just too toxic and just isn't working for me.
Mhm.
And that, again, it's that confusion about what's valuable and what's valueless. On one hand, it's valuable to be kind of numb and kind of loose so you can not care so much about difficult situations. But really, the value is I'm not numb and I'm not disinhibited. And now I have an invitation to create a different, better way to live my life so that inner agitation that I always had to quiet with a drink, I don't go through the world with that inner agitation anymore.
Well, and each time you're challenged to face something head on, then the next time you have to challenge that you have that challenge, it's not as hard. Whereas if you're numbing every time, you never make those advances.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Um, I think of, living every day as kind of an experiment in what's going to work today. And when I go back and review and say, gosh, what worked well? What do I wish hadn't worked as well? And if I could rewind the day and do it over, what might I have done differently? It's just such a gentle, kind way of continually learning to grow rather than lashing myself and telling myself that I'm not good.
Yes, and that's exactly what we do too. Because we can't promise it's not going to happen again. So we just get all upset with ourselves and go down in this big dark hole. And then we sit and worry that it's going to happen again. Whereas if I love the daily idea that, okay, what would I have changed? What would I have done different? What would I have said different? How would I have handled it different?
Yep, that's my daily
That's,
practice.
oh, I love that. I love it. Love it. Okay, so how can people find you and the program and information on you and about your book? Where can they get that?
Well, the best place to go is JuicyAF.life. JuicyAF.life. That's my main website. If you want the book, click on the buy the book link and it'll take you to a page with a video of me. And I have a special offer going right now where people that buy an ebook from me get a 7-day Stop the Drinking Spiral challenge. It's an email challenge with a bunch of different ways to de-stress without picking up a drink. And then they also get a 45-minute one-on-one call with me where we identify their relationship with alcohol. They get a lot of clarity. They understand what's keeping them stuck and identify the very next step for them that's best for them.
So then do you work with people privately also?
I do. Yeah, I love to work
Good.
with women in groups because many of us need to find our tribe. You know, as you were saying, a lot of women that have an issue with alcohol gravitate to other people that drink a lot. And so creating an alcohol-free life, be it for a month or 3 months or forever, it requires that you have relationships with other women that are doing the same thing and growing along the same lines at the same time.
Right. I think, too, with the reason that you associate with the people who are doing what you're doing is because you feel like you fit in.
Of course.
So, that's why we hang out with people that drink and party or whatever, but it's the same thing. You're going to associate with the people that are in the group.
Yeah, absolutely. There's research that shows that if 5 of your friends are overweight, 90% likely you're overweight too, or if they smoke, you probably smoke too. Same thing's true with drinking.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited I've already got other ideas and questions that I want to ask you. So chances are we might see you again on
I would love
It's That Normal, It's Toxic podcast. So for those of you who are looking for her, she gave you her contact information, or you can get a hold of me because I have a direct line in to the lady in the red glasses. But again, thank you for being here. And I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. This was a great conversation.